this video and learn y'all a little bit. This lady's name is, or the name of her show is The Angela Rose Show, and she has 13.2 thousand subscribers. This video was posted a month ago.
As much as I can, because that's what it is being a man. That's what is being a man. That's what is
so
being
cute.
chivalrous.
Why the hell would you ever align with a bunch of girls?
But I think that's kind of a man thing to do, where we're really kind of like thinking it through, like systematically what we have to do, like, you know, the army or something.
This is the part where she starts explaining something, and at the end she says something completely wrong. Women's intuition, all right? I'm going to tell you something about women's intuition. It's a myth. The idea that you can just assume and it makes you right. Emotionally, knowing absolutely nothing about the situation, you want to assume and be right. That's not intuition. That's guessing. Based on what you heard, what you've got your head stuffed with. Men are educated far better than women. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as respectfully as I can, that men are taught useful things. Are men taught to daydream about having babies and getting married and live in a castle with Prince Charming? No. No, we're not. We're taught that you need to man up and provide. You protect women, you protect children.
Yes, so men are able to think in a progressive manner, but they focus on what is right there. Women try to automatically arrive at the answer, although a lot of times we're wrong. And we have women's intuition, but sometimes it's not always right. And it's just about being able to work with each other and being able to see.
She's right. We do need to be able to work with each other, but saying, oh, well, women's intuition is sometimes we're wrong. Oftentimes, if you feel emotionally, like the guy who you are literally just punching in the face, if you feel emotionally like he might hit you back eventually, so you call the cops because maybe next time you're beating on him, he might hit you back. This has nothing to do with women's intuition. This all has to do with playing victim. But what I want to talk about here is this episode. It's called Women Don't Need Men Till They Do. Now we can listen to the very end of it with her together.
The good and focus on the good exclusively and make a conscious effort to do so, because if we're not...
All right, so if we're just focusing on the good, all right, this is what we're told as men. We'll just focus on the good. Just focus on the good. And of course, women hear that too. Just focus on the good. No, don't just focus on the good. All right, I'm going to give you an example from this episode. It's something that is very commonplace among literally all of these survivor type shows, these on an island type shows. The innate sexism and the favoritism towards the women, the having to put in a lot of special effort to allow women to be a part of it when they don't have any survival skills that they were taught. Even the ones who have those survival skills, the ones who should have common sense, they're doctors, right? You would think that the doctor and the nurse on that island would use their brains and figure out that, yeah, you're probably going to get sick if you drink water that you just left pork in overnight. Yeah, that's probably not a good idea. Some religious laws have important meaning behind them. When you live in the desert and food is scarce and water is scarce, Well, you might try to preserve your food in a fashion that's not the best way to do it. So they made Jewish law so that you, first of all, didn't mess around with pork. Second of all, you don't store pork or any other meat with your vegetables. In an era where they didn't have disinfectants, or extremely effective disinfectants, well, it was pretty important to keep your dishes separate. Your meat was eaten off of a different dish than your vegetables were. Your dishes were often made out of either clay or wood, and they will absorb the stuff around them. They'll absorb the fats from your meat. That's also part of the reason for cooking on your bakeware and eating off of your bakeware. Now we get to see the important skills that the women were bringing to the table on this show. What were they bringing? When you just look at the positive, all right, you have 14 women on an island. 2 of those women are doing all of the work for all of the women there. Don't look at the negative. Don't look at the fact that 2 people are trying to feed 14 people. Don't look at the fact that those other 12 people are laying down on the beach, not collecting water, not doing anything to attempt to collect water. For the men, they had to be preemptive. They had to set up a water filtration system and had to set up a water collection system. And they set it up so that when it rains, they could collect that water. This knowledge, these men kept on trying to impart this knowledge onto women who wanted to argue their intuition. The men are literally telling them blatantly, here is what you got to do to save your life. Instead of coming to us, being strong, independent women that you are, you keep coming to us to take care of you. Over and over and over and over and over again, those women either had to go to those men for a rescue, or of course, the medical people had to be called in to rescue literally all of them. The people who were supposed to not get involved had to literally call these women up on the radio and say, hey, this is a life or death thing for you to understand this very basic thing.
Consciously trying, then it's going to be wrapped up in bad thinking. So we need to take the time to write out good things about the opposite sex.
No. Good thinking. A lot of people thought that good thinking was going to fix it. That's what we have taught women, is that positive thinking. When that doesn't work, whining and pining. Eventually somebody will do something. Good thinking, yes, positive thinking will get the job done. No, it won't. Getting off your ass gets it done. Working together gets it done. Telling somebody else what to do doesn't get it done. One of the girls over in that tribe, she just ends up getting bossed around the whole thing. Like, she's the main provider for the entire tribe there, right? She's the one who's bringing in the food. She's the one who's doing the work. She's a nurse. Now, yeah, she screwed up a lot. But the other girls there wanted to be squeamish about, well, they're complaining every day about starving to death. And they have 2 perfectly good pigs that just wandered into their camp. Just wandered in there, and they made them pets. Those are the very pigs that eventually they did slaughter. They had to be explained to them. You have perfectly good meat right there. What are you doing complaining about not having food and wanting to borrow ours? When those women were cold, first of all, they could have built shelter. Did they learn how to build a shelter, though? Who taught them how to build a shelter? Sure, they got a fire started first. Yay them. But what good did it do them when half of them sat there with the fire? They could have picked up part of the fire and taken it with them, literally. They didn't have effective leadership. Positive thinking doesn't fix things. Doing something about it now, before it gets worse, is what fixes things. You got a leaky pipe under your sink. You can fix it now, or you can let it continue to do that. It'll start molding and rotting the wood that's underneath. It'll start molding and rotting your floorboards underneath that eventually. By not taking care of it when it first starts, putting some sort of sealant on it, just letting it go, eventually your pipe is going to rust through too. Or it's going to calcify and make it very difficult to remove it. Now, every time these women wanted to go play Let's Make a Deal, they stabbed the dudes in the back and then went back to laying on the beach because there was 2 islands right next to each other, one full of men, one full of women. The women would continually waste energy to travel over to where the men were for their resources. That amount of effort could have been used by those women. All of them were willing to travel over to where the men were for the men's lodging, the men's food, the men's water, the men's fire. And then they'd go back to laying on the beach. All of them. With the men, they had a couple of tiffs, but they still all contributed. It wasn't 12 men laying on the beach doing nothing, complaining that they were out of water. And then at night, while it's raining, complaining that they didn't have shelter and it was raining all night and they couldn't get any sleep. And then the next day, laying on the beach and complaining that they don't have any water. Didn't get any sleep last night because it was raining. One of these things is not like the others. One of these things just isn't the same. One group of people is taught how to problem solve and how to be realistic in real life situations. And one of them is taught, okay, well, we'll talk big and then we'll go mooch off of somebody else. And then we'll complain that we weren't given enough. People will get sick of it, but we'll go back and whine and pine and eventually cry. And if that doesn't work, what's next? What are you bringing to the table? What they're not bringing to the table is actual real-life experience or actual real-life help. They're not helping the community. They're dependent in all of those situations. The 2 women who are taking care of the women's tribe, those 2 women through all of it were the ones taking care of the women. Multiple times the men had to help. Men offered them, hey, you know what, you got a fishing net. We don't. You let us use your fishing net, we'll give you half the fish. The lady translated it as, oh, well, they're going to promise us 50 fish for the net. That's like 3 fish apiece. But the way they approach, are you kidding me? $1 million on the line, and even then, even for $1 million, Getting them to put in any sort of actual manual labor or effort towards saving or protecting their own lives was impossible. What are we teaching these girls? We're dependent on each other. Okay, that is the reality of it. We are dependent on each other. But you know what? Us men, when we're being victimized by women, we need you to speak up just the same as we speak up for you. You say chivalry's dead. If we protect you, then of course we're toxic men. We're toxic masculinity. If we don't protect you, then it's toxic men and toxic masculinity. If you stare at us just for walking across a parking lot in Tillamook, Oregon, glaring at us when we did nothing wrong to you, but you can go to the gym and throw a tantrum if a man glances your direction. Now you get to see these two different sets of videos. You get to see the one set of videos where a man sees a woman struggling, and he says, hey, could I help you so you don't end up injuring yourself in this gym? Of course, you don't want people getting injured in your gym. And he offers help so she doesn't get hurt, right? And then we got all these other videos where there's women complaining that chivalry is dead because they wanted help. But if a man goes up and helps her, what's going to happen? Toxic masculinity. Now he's on a YouTube video, being painted as a perv who only goes to the gym to gawk at women. Then, of course, when you talk about the gym perverts, yeah, I'm sure they exist. I'm sure there's old guys there who show up because they're lonely. I'm sure there's young guys there who show up because they're lonely. Just want somebody to talk to. I was never into the gym. Not my thing. Now this lady here with the women's intuition. Oh, women just magic themselves to the right answer, right? Women's intuition. No. If you ignore the facts, ignore the evidence, and jump to conclusions and call that an answer, you're not thinking right. When you've already assumed who's guilty and who's innocent, you're not thinking right. When you think you have some sort of special intuition, keep in mind your intuition is wrong. What was the intuition of all 14 of those women? The intuition of all 14 of those women was to throw away a container of fresh water that, yes, although it was nastified, could have been made drinkable, and the container itself was even more important than the water in it. If you have to, you can dump the water out. But you need to get fire. You need to maintain your fire. And you need to make sure that you boil it. Boil the crap out of that water. And then we're told, oh, well, you know, they picked women that they knew would fail. They only picked women who didn't know what was going on. No, realistically, this is what we have taught women in this country. And that show right there was, one of them was American and one of them was one from the British Isles. And we got to see both sets. Because part of it is on other shows like Survivor. Same thing. Where they had to pair up the women with men so that the women would stand a chance of surviving. It's not that women are weaker. Women are capable of using their brains for the same things that we are. Women are capable of learning how to build a house. They are capable of learning to roof. Women are entirely capable of learning about things other than Gucci and Prada and Louis Vuitton. We can teach women all of the male trades instead of teaching them how to man trap. I'm not talking about just baby trapping a man. I'm talking about how many women call on our sacred unwritten rule, our sacred duty to protect them when they do something fucked up and want revenge on somebody. You have no idea how many of you men have been used as revenge because a woman didn't get what she wanted right when she wanted it. And most of you have been on the receiving end of it, so you know what it feels like. But then you don't see it that way when you're doing it to another man, do you? Because you heard a rumor. This women's intuition stuff. No. This positive thinking stuff. You know what? Telling the truth is not negative thinking. You have to first diagnose the problem. The problem is, out of 14 women, 12 of them ain't doing jack shit. That's the problem. What is the solution? This is where the positive part comes in. Not just jumping to the conclusion of, oh, well, if we're all happy and sunshiny, and start talking in our, oh, poor me voice. I'm cold. It's called vocal manipulation. Like when she starts crying when she didn't get what she wanted. Her boyfriend caught her shooting up heroin in the bathroom and kicked her out. Now she's over at your house saying her boyfriend raped her. Or beat on her. Or was chasing her through the house with a knife. Yeah, he's probably going to jail for something that didn't happen. He's probably going to get assaulted repeatedly over something that didn't happen. And we're all going to follow along in our accepted gender roles in that situation where a man is supposed to protect a woman and a man has to do it all himself. It's a man's responsibility to protect a man, and no one's job except a man's to protect that man. When it comes to women and children, we're supposed to do whatever they want, whenever they want. Well, I'm more likely to jump to help a child than a woman. I'm just as likely to help a man who asks for help, especially if he's asking for the same help that, well, we all need. It's universal. We get to see in all of these shows how guys tend to work together. Even if they have differences of opinion, they're still working towards the same goals. You get to see how differently they approach it, though. In all of these shows, you get to see how the conniving, oh poor me, the most sweet and innocent ones on the shows still know exactly how to manipulate. For the guys, for a lot of these guys in these shows, unless they were married, they're completely blindsided by this. You get to see in these shows how these guys fall for it, hook, line, and sinker every time. How they're made to feel sorry for these girls. Now, in real life, most of these guys would have helped these girls in a lot more of these situations. They would have helped these girls every time they came running. which they did repeatedly over and over and over and over and over, like literally every day, as soon as they found out where the men's camp was. Literally every day. Like, are you not seeing a problem here? All these women will expend calories to travel from their camp to the men's camp every day. All of those calories that they could have spent preparing for when it rains again to collect that water. All of that time that they could have spent going out and getting something to eat or boiling their water or making sure that they properly preserved it. You got plenty of salt water there. That salt water is good for preservation. You just got to know how to do it properly. And they didn't. You would think at least the nurses would know how to keep it safe and keep it clean. You would think that a nurse would know that putting a pork product that you just cooked, it's still warm, you're putting it into your only drinking water source. And you're going to leave it there until the next day. And then you're going to drink from that water source. And you're going to try to eat that meat. And you would think that a professional nurse would know better. Forget your intuition. Look at evidence. See, that's the thing through all of this. You guys want to throw it in my face when I do desperate things to try to get the evidence seen. You're not helping me get it seen, are you? No, you're all playing on the gender roles. A man has to do it himself. You'll just tell him what to do, even though you know he's not going to be heard. Men need help in the same way that women do. And for the same reasons, except that for men, that help is not there. That help is not there. We've taught women that telling men happy, shiny things, or playing victim, or poor me, poor me, poor me, is supposed to be acceptable. No, that's what fucking 5-year-olds do. When we're actually going through hell, we are ignored. We, as men, are ignored. We are chastised. We are publicly humiliated. Before a woman goes doing this playing victim thing to the police, the first thing she's going to do is go slander this man's name to all of his friends. Her actions are premeditated based on an understanding of the law. They are all taught how to manipulate the law in order to get what they want. How to play on the, oh, poor me, I'm a poor innocent girl. And even the most sweet and innocent of the girls on these shows, they're the ones who start pulling the most emotional BS and drama and trying to create problems with everyone else and within all of these groups. When you're trying to survive, it is probably a good idea to ignore that drama and work on surviving. How about instead of lazing on a beach all day, you take some of them fronds that you've got all over the place and you make a funnel and you stick it where? Into your water container that you do have. How about when you keep going to the guys and complaining that you don't have any food, when they're offering to share their food, if you let them use your net, you don't have to do any of the fishing. They're going to do it for you. And even then, you don't want to give up the net. Even for $1 million, you don't want to do the work. You don't want to collect the food. You want to complain to the 2 women who are doing all of the work and the 14 men who are working together until those men were like, all right, enough is enough. We have given enough. We're feeding these women because they are not capable of feeding themselves. They're not capable of using common sense in these scenarios, not because they don't have it, but because they have not been taught these things. This is not the information that they have retained in their head. Because here, in the real world, that's not what they're taught to utilize. They're taught to utilize manipulation and looks and makeup, form-fitting clothing, people's bias, people's assumption, whatever it takes to twist and manipulate whatever you can get out of everyone else. You get to hear in all these shows how when the men keep their end of the bargain, how the women don't. And how they complain about how they're somehow getting screwed. Hey, you're not starving to death. You have clean drinking water. You have a warm fire. You have a warm bed. Wait. None of those things are yours, are they? And all of that time that they were there, did those women ever construct anywhere close to an adequate shelter? No. Did they ever actually coordinate and work together? Only on occasions where it was a horrible idea. You get to hear how when the women try saying what the deal was, you can hear what the deal was. The men said that they would give the women 50% of the fish for the use of the net. What did the women say? The woman who answered, well, she wanted to say, oh, well, they said that they would give us 50 fish. And they just wanted to be prideful. The whole women's tribe wanted to be very prideful. No, we're strong women. We can do it ourselves. We've gotten this far without the men. No, you haven't. You didn't get anywhere without the men. You went in circles and got lost on a fucking tiny island. Now the two girls who did all the work, kudos. Hell yes. Those women deserve to get some money just because they did take care of an entire tribe of ungrateful people. While the men were busy constructing and building and making things, the women were busy lazing on a beach, doing things half-assed and then giving up. Doing things that were blatantly and obviously things that we all learned in school were unintelligent to do. So why would somebody do that? With all of those women having the same education that the rest of us had. You know, the one with the British women on it, that one was the most surprising one. That's the one that I'm talking about. Because they're supposed to have a better education than all the rest of us, right? They're British. What are they known for? Their wonderful educational system. Being smarter than everyone else. Oxford and Cambridge and whatnot. What do we have now? What we have is a system whereby we give everything to women because women are showing blatantly and outright that they have no care for taking care of themselves anymore. That's what feminism has done. It has enslaved all men to take care of all women. Why? Why? So we can get treated like we're horrible people for taking care of you? So you can go trash talk us? So you can complain about a deal where you obviously came out with the better end of the deal. and you're going to make it as if the men are trying to screw you over. When they're doing a good deed, they're trying to be good Samaritans, even though there's $1 million on the line. And eventually those men, understanding that if they kept on doing those things for the women, none of those women were interested in learning how to fish, especially not for the very beginning of it. Later on, some of those women did actually learn what the men were trying to teach. They also wanted to come over to the men's camp. These men have work to do, all right? They're up during the day doing the work while the sun's up. But the women want to come over, and as soon as the men roll out of their sacks, the women roll onto the bunk and want to go to sleep in what the men's labor has produced. And then they want to complain that the men are doing what it takes to keep them all alive, because those women don't want their sleep to be disturbed, because they got a horrible night's sleep because they never built an adequate shelter. No matter how much help they were given, it was wine and pine until they got what they wanted, and then complain that they got what they wanted. Or complain that people weren't giving enough. Someone named Moxie typed, "Hey." Hey, Moxie. So the problem here is what? Positive thinking does not find solutions. Just guessing at what we should do. That's what's going on when somebody has been victimized and they need help turning in their predators. Chances are pretty good they know it needs to be done. Chances are pretty good they are already aware of what needs to be done. You need to listen, though. But we've also been taught that no man should be allowed to speak. Anything he says is mansplaining. Moxie typed hello. Hello, Moxie. Like I've been saying from the very start, it's not that men and women are so different, it's because men and women are taught so different. Well, the guys, most of their conversations were about doing the work and getting work done, and their complaints were mostly about people being lazy and not doing anything, or wasting time unnecessarily. What did the majority of the women complain about? Not having food, not having water, not having all of the things that the men had. Not getting enough sleep, and of course the constant and non-stop drama and gossip and drama and gossip and head games, and back to complaining yet again. And then going to the prideful thing. After they've had a full belly, after they have not eaten because they're not using their brains, they've learned that there are men nearby and they can use their feminine wiles. So this is the tool that through all of these shows, women in all of these shows want to use their feminine wiles. Oh, are you sure? I'm hungry. But I'm hungry. Oh, Pooh Bear. Oh, hoo, hoo, hoo. Oh, hoo, hoo, hoo. What it came down to is plain and simple laziness. Entire dependency upon men. A complete lack of an education in how to actually take care of yourself. I mean, these are basic fundamentals that children in third world countries know. Basic fundamentals. You have to be lucky enough to join the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts to learn many of these skills, apparently. We had classes in high school on how to do this stuff. They were electives. Everybody had to take one home ec class, home economics. how to cook, how to sew. Now, the odd thing about it is the girls that I went to high school with in Chapel, Nebraska, Lodgepole, Nebraska, also took the same home economic classes as us boys did. Who retained that information? The boys. The boys retained that information because we're in the plight of feminism, where a woman shouldn't be expected to know life skills. See, here's one for you. There's a woman I know named Victoria. She doesn't cook. She doesn't know how to cook. She's also got a kid. But that's not the important part. Well, it is, because now you've got another life dependent on your ability to provide. She doesn't know how to cook at all. She won't cook. She depends entirely on fast food and donations, entirely for food. She gets prepared food because she is afraid of cooking. But then she wants to complain. One of her biggest complaints is that men expect her to cook. Well, hold on a second. These guys are expecting you to cook for yourself. For them not to have to take you out to McDonald's because you'll whine and pine because you want to go to McDonald's, or you want to go to wherever it is that you particularly want to go. Or you want to have him play the guessing game. Like, you know where you want to go. Why do you make us spend 30 minutes going through every possible place before you tell us what you're hungry for? Even in a survival situation with $1 million on the line, getting those women to actually produce labor, actual labor. I'm not talking about labor as in giving birth to a child. I'm talking about actually using life skills, actually providing a shelter for themselves, actually maintaining a fire for themselves. Their intuition almost got them all, literally all of them, killed. More than once. That situation where they put that pork in their water could have killed every one of them. And nearly did. With the exception of the one that didn't eat the pork. But she also wasn't going to drink the water because it had animal in it. Some good thinking. Now, this lady here, the part at the end about your wishful thinking, oh, it's been shown that if you think, no. Your idea of thinking positive is completely different from mine. My idea of thinking positive is, all right, there's materials here that I can utilize to build myself a fucking house. That's how us boys are taught to think. We can take these materials and build something with them. Here in the United States, we're taught that that's also illegal, to harvest our own materials. We have to go to the lumberyard. But in a survival setting like that, yeah, we know how to build things. We've been taught how to build things. This is our assigned gender role. It's part of protecting women and children. If we build them a house that's strong enough so the lion can't get in and eat them, or so that somebody else who wants to come in and do harm is going to have difficulty doing so. When you say, oh, well, I have an aunt who worked in construction for like 6 years. Okay, well, your aunt knows something about construction, but what do you know about construction? Telling me that you've got an aunt who worked construction, those are not your credentials. That doesn't mean you know everything about construction. This women's intuition thing is a myth. Just because you emotionally feel like it, that you must be right. No, that is not how it works. You emotionally feel like some guy who is not good looking is rapey, that is completely different from somebody trying to rape you now, isn't it? You and your friends bullying somebody until they have a mental breakdown, bullying that person until they want their life to end, that's not you being fucking victimized. Them begging you to call off the dogs isn't you being victimized. Them going to their friends and asking for help, stopping it, it's not you being victimized. That's not you being stalked. That's not you being fucking harmed. You get to hear Christopher Weaver in the recording between him and I, where he pretends like, after wanting to be insulting to me, like he's somehow the victim in this. No, he's absolutely not. Let's play the stuff from him. When I point out that women do this, it's not just women, men do this too. Men and women both treat men primarily the same way. We're non-entities. We do not matter. We need to do it ourselves. Men's job is to take care of women and children, and you're not a woman or a children, so you're on your own. That's how we're treated by men and women. I'm in Oregon.
You're in Oregon?
I can't hear you. I don't have any idea why this is so quiet. How do I increase the volume? You guys can hear the traffic and stuff around me, right? On this phone, it filters it out quite a bit. This is a newer phone. It's cheaper, but it's newer. And also, like, unless I hold it right to my head, like, I literally can't hear what it says when there's cars driving by or anything like that. And not all of it is picked up by this one, which is kind of good because I can hear it better. On a lot of the recordings that I make on the phone that I'm recording with now, if it's fuzzy, it stays fuzzy. Oh, come on. Come on in.
I got mine all the way up.
Alright. Dude, I'm still going through hell from all of that.
What?
I said I'm still going through hell for all of that.
You're talking about the chick that fucking died or whatever?
Do what?
The hell for what?
All the hell over that stuff with Natalie and her family and all them people on the internet. It's not just on the internet, it's real life, dude.
Well, I don't know. You haven't been on my fucking friends list in 7 years, so I wouldn't know.
That's not my choice. You chose to be a dick.
First time I tried to reach out to you, you fucking just start fucking screaming at me and yelling at me like I'm a piece of shit for abandoning you when I had...
I'll show that to you. I've already showed it on this channel more than once. Been showing it repeatedly for the last few days. He wanted to start off, after all these years, he asked me how I'm doing, right? And then he sends me a message. Well, it's a fucking insult. Especially after all these years and him throwing me away because my life wasn't fucking perfect. All the sacrifices I'd made for him, all of the times that I had protected him from his own stupidity after he'd done something stupid. Like, of course, when he had sex with Lexi Delgado after she was legally not supposed to be anywhere near him. Was I there? Absolutely I was. She was trying to sexually assault me first. And then she needed a back rub. And then, of course, she wanted sex. And then what did she do immediately afterward? She went down to Pearl Street. Started running around to all of his friends and telling them that he raped her. I found out the next day, and what did I do? What a good person is supposed to do. I spoke up about how wrong that situation was. About how she was not the victim. And there's a lot of people who are mad at me about that decision because Christopher Weaver wasn't liked. That's because she had repeatedly done stuff similar to that. When she stole their kid and was staying on someone's back porch during a blizzard with a newborn baby, she tried to throw Chris under the bus. When she passed out at a park in, what was it, Fort Collins, I think? Fort Morgan. And her daughter, a toddler by this point, was running around in the street, the main street in town. It was always somehow Christopher Weaver's fault. But you also get to hear how Christopher Weaver doesn't take responsibility for any fault of his own. No, he fucking huffs and puffs and goes, "Oh, well, it's always my fault." You're right, it is. As long as you're going to act like a 5-year-old. And then you want to complain. If I act like you do. If I treat you how you treat me. How you get condescending and mean. About how I don't matter because your kid, but you're not taking care of your kid, are you? He threw me away years ago, and then he's typing to me, or telling me in this one, this is the first words that we've spoken to each other in 7 years. Right? And he's telling me that the first time he reached out to me, I yelled at him. No, I didn't yell at him. Everything I did, I typed. If you'll listen to me, I'll tell you nicely how it affects me.
I have my own fucking life too, you know, like.
Dude, that's the thing, is that literally, I've tried to talk to you about it, you just interrupt me to talk about you and tell me that I'm fucking selfish, dude. Expect what? What do you expect from me? In 7 years, I tried reaching out to you and all you did was talk over me.
You're right. Everything's my fucking fault. I did it, I guess. Fucking, I don't.
And see, there he hung up on her. Pretty standard. Tries to play it off like he's been attacked. He's being yelled at and screamed at. Well, the very first thing he did was start typing fucking cursing at me. I don't have a real good connection on this as far as going to my Facebook, but I do try. It just gives me a substandard thing. I'm trying to get all this stuff unlocked on my phone. What the hell? God damn it. Alright, now I accidentally accepted his friend request, which I did not mean to do. And I do not have the ability to undo the request on this phone. At least I can take a picture of it. We'll go to messages. All right. See older messages. He typed at me yesterday at 2:53 a.m. And what did he type at me? Let's take a look. He typed at me, whole ass. So I typed to him, you ran and hid for 7 years. No, I'm not still alive. Friends like you fucking killed me with your cowardice. And of course, here's all the stuff about his daughter he wants to type about. And you know what? I can understand that. I can understand it. Type, well, let me read it. I suppose I should read that. He typed, sad you think me leaving to be near my daughter is cowardice. Oh no, that's not the part that's cowardice. I typed, no, hiding behind your daughter after 7 years is cowardice. When did you run away like a little bitch? And I'm still taking hell. But you wouldn't know that because you are the same selfish piece of shit you always were. You took advantage of my kindness, and I still protected your dumb ass. We'll see some newer messages. He typed, I left to be around my kid and get away from all the dumb tweaker bullshit. Yeah, just like I did. He typed, but somehow that makes me selfish because I chose a better path. No, he didn't choose a better path. When he and I stopped being friends, it's because he was still traveling around the country, getting drunk, going to parties, complaining about women in his life who wouldn't touch his noodle. Everything was more important than me. Everything was more important than his daughter. Any excuse to run away. Because it's not just women who treat us this way, it's also men. And of course, you use your personal turmoils, whether real or imagined, as an excuse to look away to the harm that happens to others, especially if they're men. How many months of my life did I put aside to help Christopher Weaver? 3 whole months of my life. The whole time getting lied to. Over and over and over. Christopher Weaver saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And we're almost there, man. We're almost there. You know what? I'll be able to keep my word as soon as this is all done and over. But he starts off, he asks me how I'm doing. It's like fucking 2:30 in the morning, something like that. And he types at me, are you still alive? That's what he typed at me. Are you still alive? Well, I hadn't seen it before he types at me, whole ass. Okay. What does that tell me? It tells me that Christopher Weaver wants something. Anyway, when a male is being victimized and he reaches out for help, he gets the whole feeling sorry for yourself. Christopher Weaver is no exception. He pulled the same bullshit. When a male needs help, you go out of your way to treat him like shit for even asking. How dare he ask? He's a man. He should do it himself. But how many months of my life did I set aside? That was just one stint of helping him out. And over and over and over again. It's just like the situation with Christian here in town. If I tell him no, he might throw a tantrum and make things worse for all of us. He might go vandalize something or break something or get drunk and beat on somebody because he didn't get what he wanted right when he wanted it. And then he wants to hide behind his kids. Wants to hide behind his daughter and claim, oh, well, I was trying to be near my... No, you weren't. You were busy partying and complaining and making everyone else's life shitty with your negativity. When I come to you for help, I already know what help I need, and I'm trying to explain that to you, but all you want to do is argue. When you needed help, was I like that? No, I helped you right away. But not one of you ever reciprocated that. Was it the help that I needed? Or the help that you claimed that you would provide? No, it was you changing your mind over and over and over again. For you, it's changing your mind. For me, because I know what's going on in my life, and I know about the changes that are going on because I pay attention to it. It's my life. When something changes, it's not just me changing my mind, and it's not me lying about a situation. It's the fact that the situation changed while you were twiddling your stupid thumbs, wanting to believe that you know better than me, that your intuition is more important than my knowledge of the situation. Does that make any sense? Between a doctor and a police officer, a doctor is the one who has to diagnose, not a police officer. When it's a police officer that you're trying to turn in, and they literally take you to the hospital to try to have you discredited, all they're willing to listen to is if you are thinking about harming others. They don't care if people are harming you. We have found that out repeatedly with 988 and with every single other service, not only here in Tillamook County, but nationwide. How males who are being abused go in for help and are lied to about what the procedures are. These men are victimized out of their resources because they're predators. All they have to do is play victim, pretend that somebody might do bad things to them. Now, why is it that on these survivor type shows, why is it that we don't have a whole bunch of people complaining about being sexually assaulted and raped on these shows? Because there's always cameras there, and it prevents women from playing victim. It prevents those women from playing their head games that far when they don't get what they want. You get to see how twisted and manipulative and feral the women on these shows get when they aren't given what they want, when they want it, in exactly the proportions they want, with exactly their deal of them doing nothing but laying on the beach and having it carried to them. Many of these women were pissed off that they had to travel to the men's camp to get resources, to get food, to get sleep. Christopher Weaver was involved in a situation where a guy named Ryan disappeared. He was Mandy Singer's son. And even though Natalie Bollinger had just disappeared and later on it turned out that she was dead, I still did my best to try to help find Mandy Singer's son. When nobody else would go talk to Ogre, aka Christopher Weaver, I talked to him on a bus. I saw Phoenix on the same bus, aka Brian Phoenix Priester. If it hadn't been for the cameras, if it had been just $1 million, you can guarantee that women on that island would have pretended that they were sexually assaulted in order to try to get that money. The only thing that kept them honest was the cameras, and even that didn't keep them honest. Repeatedly, all of the women, all of them there, were repeatedly busted lying over and over and over through the entire show. Lying to each other, lying to themselves, lying to the men, lying to the producers. The men pretty well stuck to the truth, now didn't they? Now you guys want to point out the few exceptions where, of course, it's a game for $1 million and men are acting differently than they would in real life. Most of those men would have helped those women out with that stuff over and over and over again in real life, in the real world. Because that's what we've been taught to do. But for $1 million, yeah, we should probably play for the $1 million. That's what we showed up for, right? That eventually had to become the mantra and the mentality of those men. And still, they couldn't stick to it because it is ingrained in our brains that if we don't help these women, if we allow these women to make bad decisions to the point that they literally starve to death or poison themselves to death with bad water, bad meat, that they poison themselves by not paying attention to simple biology that we learned in, well, we literally learned it here in the United States in elementary school. But of course, by third or fourth grade, we've already got boys and girls in the we have to be boyfriend and girlfriend mentality. And at that age, yeah, many of the women in our lives, or girls in our lives, when we're that age, they want to do all right, well, we're not going to do what you boys want. You guys just want to play cowboys and Indians, or you want to play construction, and we want to play tea and getting married and play house, and we want you to play with the dolls with us and pretend like you're a daddy. So how many of us boys went along and played with the dolls, played with the Barbies, had the tea parties? Well, we're also taught we're supposed to be G.I. Joe. We're supposed to not show any emotion. If we show any emotion, then we're emotionally unstable because we showed any emotion whatsoever. We're not allowed to show any emotion but anger. And only then when women tell us to, or instruct us to do so, or signal us to do so. We're all expected to bow down at her every will and command. Because if we don't, she's going to play victim. Oh, the police didn't help her to victimize an innocent man? Oh, she's going to make a big stink, and the media is going to play it down so that man is a horrible, horrible, horrible officer. What does that result in? Him being a horrible officer because he's not going to do his job, because he's afraid of women. He's afraid that they will gang up on him and twist his words and manipulate it, and that the news media will go right along with it. Anyway, someone named Joshua Mendoza typed hi. Anyway, it's 1:02. I better get into the library if I'm going to get down to where the food is. I'm probably going to have to walk. It's about 3 or 4 blocks from here, so since they start feeding at 4, I should probably leave here around 3:30. Anyway, it's good to be with you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and your sister's keeper too, and no victim left behind. Not even if they're homeless, not even if they're male, not even if they're disabled, not even if they're white, not even if they're adults.